Okay, this is the Mammoth 2 with the frozen side. Last week we put the frozen vegetables on this side, so let's take a look and see how they processed that material. Again, I had a water bottle placed here, just trying to keep the temperature down a little bit. See, the worms are concentrated in that top about 4 inches, it looks like, or top 3 inches, where all that material was. And you notice these are the smaller. Most of these are a lot of red wigglers, and there's some European night crawlers mixed in here, but for the most part, there aren't too many African night crawlers in this bin. I don't see any of the material. They've gone through it really well. There's a little bit of material there that's breaking down still. Again, the worms are all over it. Yeah, overall pretty good. There's a tiny little bit of material left, the harder stalks and stuff, tiny little chunk here and there. But all in all, they did a pretty good job of taking care of all the material I put in there. I'll definitely give it another feeding. Let's go ahead and give this side another feeding before we go over and take a look at the frozen, or the unfrozen side. So, a little shredded paper and cardboard. And then I have just right at 8 pounds, about 7, maybe it's 7.5 pounds of frozen vegetables here. We'll put on this side. This is thawed out. I thawed it out last night, so. How I get those plastic ties in there. I don't see them in the vegetables. Spread it out, and let me get some bedding to put on there. I'll work that in a little bit. So that's about 7.5 pounds of scraps and about 5 pounds or so, 6 pounds of bedding. Let's go take a look at the unfrozen side. Okay, this is the unfrozen side, and right off the bat you can tell it didn't look like the cabbage did much. And I might have to admit, cabbage is it's not going to decompose in a day or so. If anything, it's going to start growing, and you can actually see some roots actually right there starting on this. So I don't know if that's a fair test as far as throwing unfrozen items in, but yet almost all of your kales and cabbage and broccoli and cauliflower and items like that, they're going to decompose super slow unless you freeze them. So, and even the carrots. So, I mean, and that's a big majority of the stuff I throw in anyway, so maybe it is fair, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, all the cabbage is just sitting here on the top for the most part. Let's take a look at the worm density. And I mean, there's a lot of worms in the material. I mean, there's beans in here and stuff too. There was avocado, pear and stuff. they're definitely in this area. It's not like they're not here. They're definitely working the material, but it's just decomposing a lot slower, so it's just taking a lot longer, it looks like. But everywhere I dig, the worms are definitely mixed into. And they're in the cabbage. You see that guy right down deep inside of it. So, I mean, they're working on it. It's just definitely taking longer. There's no doubt about that. But as far as numbers, I mean, there's a lot of worms in here working this stuff. There's part of that banana peel that was, it's definitely pretty much gone. So the items they could eat, I guess, you know, they're eating. Some of these carrots are pretty mushy now, so they're really working on those. Again, the cabbage, cabbage is a tough one. I mean, I think I would always just freeze cabbage. And even the broccoli, I freeze it because it just does not want to, it's going to turn around and grow in your bin versus decompose. Even this piece, this has roots on it too. So there's definitely a difference between each side, but there's a lot of worms on both sides. You know, I kind of expected to be a lot more worms on the unfrozen side or the frozen side. I figured they might migrate a little bit over there, but it doesn't really look like they did. It looks like they're perfectly happy to be right here. I think there's quite a bit of food there for them, and they just can't process the food yet because it hasn't started to decompose. So I think it's more of how fast you want the castings. If you want to speed things up, you need to freeze the material and get it going, or let it sit until it's to the point of almost starting to rot before you throw it into the bin. I'm going to go ahead and feed this side again. This morning I went down and got some more vegetables down at the local garden, and they got a bunch of peppers and a bunch of odd things in there that are definitely starting to decompose and stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and feed this side again with some stuff that's kind of rotten. And take a look at that next week and see how they handle that. Okay, so I have about 6 pounds, 5.5 pounds of material I'm going to go and throw in here that's just fresh. There's some squash in here, lettuce, stalks of some broccoli, a lot of peppers, some cucumbers. Most of this stuff is pretty, pepper there is pretty doggone mushy. So that might be a little bit, at least this material has a little bit of a head start on some decomposition. So let's put it in, spread it out. And then we'll throw some bedding on top of that. So we'll come back in a week and see if that's a little bit closer to the same results. So now we have basically frozen material that's been thawed out on one side, on the left side, and on the right side. This time we put in fresh material that hasn't been frozen, but it's definitely going bad. So I think it'll probably come out a little bit better. I think they're really going to be able to attack this food a lot quicker. So that's all for now. Till next week, this is Tom from VermiBag. Ciao.